howdy, I'm Matt, and in this episode for you is the full review of the Revenge Sportwing. Now, as many of you already know, I've had this model for about a month now, and it's only now that I feel that I can put together a whole review for you. So we'll be taking a look at the model, its construction, and we'll also be going across to the flight line, and I've got some onboard footage of this model because one thing which you can say about this model, well, two things actually. Number one, it's stupidly robust.
Telemetry lost.
Oh.
Hello.
Engine off. Telemetry lost.
Lost. Fell safe. Oh,
Engine off.
I'm over there somewhere. You ready?
Yeah.
Oh, wait a moment.
I completely missed that, and I'm gutted.
And number two is that it really does fly fast. Now, to get to this stage, and many of you know that I'm normally quite quick on getting models out the door from build to being flown, and then we'll get a review out. But actually this one's taken much longer because it has required quite a few tweaks to get it to a stage where I felt very comfortable to be able to talk in front of you about this model. So let's start with the beginning, which is that this model's very new. It's from a company called flyingwings.co.uk. I'll put a link to it in the video description for you. And for 100% clarity, this model was bought out of my own money for my own abuses and we're no way affiliated with Flying Wings. Now, the good point is that this model only cost 40 quid. 40 quid plus shipping. Now, I know for some of you which are, say, not in the United Kingdom that shipping's going to be expensive, and I'm afraid that's just the way the cookie crumbles. There are many models which I've bought from the United States, and it's cost me an arm and a leg, in shipping. It's just the way it is. However, for 40 quid, it's a lot of foam, and it's actually a very, very enjoyable model, and I've actually enjoyed flying this one, and I've now got a very, very close to, for what I would class as being perfect for me and my flying style. So let's talk about the model, get into the nitty gritty, So the model is made out of black mold and black wire cut EPP. Okay, so if you didn't know this, black EPP seems to be way tougher than the normal white EPP foam. I don't know why it is, it just always seems to be denser. There's always exceptions to the rule, which comes to that motor mount at the back, which is super dense white EPP foam. That stuff is rock hard. We'll talk about that in a moment. But as a general rule, it's a wire cut EPP and plywood construction. So if we have a look here in the bird's nest, and again, it's not the tidiest build which I've ever done here, is that if we look closely, is that you'll see that down these edges, in fact, let me just zoom in for you a moment. So we'll zoom in and we'll take a quick look. Obviously, I tidied up my desk for you this morning. Anyway, moving on. Right, so we've got plywood plates on here. So it's 2mm plywood on either side. So you've got a plywood construction. And what you do, you get these two pieces of foam either side and you glue them to the plywood. So I just use Yoo-Hoo Pour because it's a very cheap glue. You could use any glue you wanted really, and just stuck them to the sides, and then you stick them to the center section itself. And it does come with a molded nose. Now, one little bit of tip or one little bit of feedback which I gave Richard at Flying Wings was that while you have this black center section, which is down at the bottom, and you'll see here, it's actually underneath this nose section here, and it goes along the bottom as well, is that while it's relatively easy to get straight out to glue the actual fuselage together, it would have been miles easier if there was maybe a plywood plate in the bottom of here with little tabs, so that you really couldn't go wrong when putting this model together. So that was again a little bit of feedback which I gave Flying Wings on this model, just to make the build process a little bit easier. But let's be fair here, it's not really hard. All you do is glue on some EPP onto some plywood. You glue the middle section in, which is really obvious once you get the kit. The one thing which I screwed up upon is that when I was doing the unboxing, that piece there, which is the motor mount here, I actually threw on the floor by accident and I didn't notice it, and I sculpted out my own, and then I found that one afterwards. And that once you feel the density on that white foam, which they're using for the motor mount at the back, is ridiculously dense. So I cut out the one which I put in and then put that one in as the proper motor mount, which is what it was meant to be. Coming back to the construction, yeah, a little bit of glue for that, a little bit of glue to hold this on again. The wings, really straightforward. Honestly, it's just child's play to put forwards, because you've just got one spar which goes all the way across. Now, there's a little note here, is that I have added some carbon fibre strip to the leading edges of the model, and that really has stiffened up the wings themselves. And again, that was my choice, that was not included in the kit, but just looking at the wing and knowing what my flying's like, I wanted the extra rigidity in the wing, and I did put carbon fibre along the leading edges. Now, coming back to the top, you do have some vertical fins. You also have, they did come cut, we'll get to a few modifications in a few moments, but you also get balsa, hard balsa, listen to that on the back, hard balsa elevons on the back of the model. You also get these fins with a piece of carbon in here. Now, don't take that piece of carbon out. It's critical that you include the carbon there, because you don't want these fins to bend over. That will cause interesting flight characteristics. And you'll also notice we got a couple of 3D printed parts, which we'll get to in a moment, because that's in the mods section. This model does fly with a Runcam 2 on the nose. I've also got a Runcam Sparrow on the nose as well. Does get this front nose section. One thing which I actually really like about this model is that you do get this little nose section here, which you can cut out and then mold to whatever your requirements are for the nose section. And that nose section has taken an absolute beating, and this model is still going. You can probably see the crease lines along the edges to give you an idea. Now, this kit, I think it came with laminate. Don't quote me on that, and you'll need to check the Flying Wings site, but one thing which I would definitely say is that you must laminate this model, okay? And the reason why I'm saying you must laminate this model is because I saw this on Dave's. He did crack his main wing spar, and this model, and I'm pretty sure his wings weren't laminated, or the fuse wasn't laminated or something like that. Mine is taken, again, I don't know if you've seen the original made in this one. It hit first flight, it was very pitch sensitive, we'll get to that in a moment, and it had a really hard landing. Then I had an issue with one of the X8R receivers, and I was like literally doing maybe 90 miles an hour across the flight line, went up into the sky, it fell safe at the top, and then went straight in the ground, rock hard ground here at the moment in the UK because of the sun which we've had, and it went smash in the ground. Not an issue. Receiver was the issue. The model was absolutely fine. I even found a run cam. And then the second time I flew it, I was belting it along, went up into the sky, fell safe at the top of a turn again, and then came down and then cartwheel on the ground. This model just laughed at it. All I had was an issue, I don't know if you can see that just there, is maybe a little bit of the laminate came away, and I got a few scuffs on the bottom of her. That's all I've had. So I can now look at you, and, or if we had the camera looking at me, I could look you in the face and go, this model's tough, because I know for a fact that this model really is tough because of the beating which it's had. Now, so that's the kit itself, 40 quid, absolute bargain. Now, there are a few little mods which I've made on mine. I do have some triangles here. These are 3D printed. These were actually meant for a Sky Hunter tail section, and they were scaled down to 50%. They're only printed in PLA, and they've worked absolutely brilliantly. And again, I'll put links to everything which we're discussing here in the video description on YouTube for you as well. I also made up some fins, and you'll see them here on this wing, and I've also put them up underneath. Now, I know you're supposed to put them in pairs, like one on the top and one on the bottom underneath each other, but I did put them down here underneath as well. And again, they're just printed in PLA. There's a link to those in the video description. I don't think it really needed them, but you've got to admit, it looks damn cool on that wing. So they're actually meant for the spec wing, which I bought at the same time from Flying Wings, and that spec wing is 30 quid. We've got a full review on that one coming shortly as well. But yeah, it didn't need these fins. I just put them up and they look really cool, so they went on. I'm sure somebody will have a question about paint on this model. I'm just using spray paint from Whole Foods, a car shop here in the UK. I'll put a link to in the top right hand corner, whichever that corner that is, to the episode which I talk about spray paints and on EPP models. A little tip for you is that I did spray white underneath the red first, because we were such a jump from black to red, the red wouldn't come out so well. So I have spray painted white underneath this first and then went to red, and that's why the red looks so good on this model. Now, the power setup which I've gone for, which is that underneath this model you'll see is that I've got a 60 amp ESC back here, and I did carve this out of the back section so that we get maximum airflow over the ESC. Now, normally I'm not a fan of putting ESCs on the bottom of a model, but what I've got to say is that it has been fine, and I've flown this model hard, and yes, the ESCs come down hot, but it's not been like burn your fingers hot, and there's been no like hints of melting, so that's always a good sign. I have kind of over-motored and well, I was grossly over-propping this model motor, to say the least. Let me just zoom in. I'm using the Turnigy D3536 1450 kV motor. Now, I was using 8x6, and unfortunately 2 speed runs, and that was it. I was running a 65C 2200 4S pack into the ground. Like, I had to 2 brand new packs which I've had here recently, both of them I had to rescue on the same day. Not good. So I've now down-propped that to a 7x5 prop, and by the way, I should have only been using an 8x4 prop, so I've gone for a smaller prop size, and again, that's just to help with torque roll on launching. Imagine an 8-inch prop back here would give plenty of torque when we're launching it. Also, just another little one thing which I really like about this model is look where the back of the model is, which is just here. I'll put my pen just there, and now look where the motor is. The motor is like almost 4 inches, like the propeller's. Let's have a quick look. I've got a tool there. The motor is literally the propeller is 3 inches away from the back of the model. That means that the propeller is in free air, or in cleaner air, and is thus much quieter. If you imagine like on a flying wing, for example, where this motor was back here in the section, it would be really loud and quite raspy. No, because the motor's back there, happy days. Oh, one really obvious thing which I've just kind of realised, which I missed, which is that this model is a plank wing. So you'll notice that it's a straight wing. Maybe comparing that to like a mini drop where the wings are forwards, or a flying wing where the wings are back. No, this is like a straight wing across. Now, there's one thing which you need to be very aware of, which is that with a plank wing, the model is very sensitive in the pitch axis, in other words, up and down. Okay, so one thing which you must take away from watching this video, if you're going to go and get one of these, you must go really careful and pay attention to what I'm about to cover when it comes to servo movements and the elevon movements in the setup, because it's absolute key. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a bucking Bronto in the sky, and the center of gravity on a model on a plank wing like this is absolutely critical.
Yeah. Right. You're right.
Up and down switchy.
Crazy twitchy. If I get this down in one piece.
Yeah.
Low rates.
Yeah. Like I said, anywhere near us is going to be good.
Engine off.
Well, the sound of that was straight onto the bloody hard.
We hit the hard stuff, didn't we?
Hard stuff.
I was thinking all this is going to be soft,
Yeah.
and if not, I put it in the edge.
I think I see something fly up.
I think that was the ground.
Yeah. Lost anything?
Well, I just got a scrap on the bottom.
Oh, I think something fly off. Like I said, it's probably a bit of mud.
No, to be honest, it was just a bit of mud. Right, that was extremely twitchy.
Okay, to the point, I have got the biggest lump of lead wedged underneath that nose because this model must hit CG, and it must be just slightly nose heavy as well. Let's talk about these movements and these surfaces. So as I mentioned, this model is very sensitive in the pitch axis, especially if it's tail heavy, okay, as I found out to my detriment. One modification which I made, and there was a couple, so the supports were one, putting some additional fins on there, and maybe the suggestion of a plywood plate in there. It was a couple so far. The other thing which I did is that I have reduced, so the actual elevons themselves, I've taken 1/2 inch off the back of the elevon's surface. Now if I got a ruler on here, just to give you an idea, there's one on the floor. So my elevon surface back here is maybe 1.5 inches deep, which is an awful lot less than what was supplied. And then over there on the ends it's about 1 inch. So I literally just measured off 1/2 inch all the way on the back edge and cut that out. And the reason why I cut that out is because this model was so sensitive in the pitch axis, even when the CG was good, even when the model was nose heavy. Now, there was a couple of things which I could do to kind of like counteract that and make the model more enjoyable, because again, when you've got a model which is very sensitive to the pitch axis, is that when you're flying extremely fast, so you're getting up to say 80, 90 miles an hour, is that you don't want a model which is that slightly little touches, you don't want it to like bob in the sky. It's not an enjoyable experience. So there's a couple of ways which you can counteract that. The first one, which is actually a tip from Richard over at Flying Wings, which is that take some of the meat out of the elevon. So I took 1/2 inch off the elevon. Another bit of feedback which I gave to the guys over at Flying Wings was to provide bigger control horns. So right now the control horn which I've got, or the one which was supplied with this, is we'll say about 1/2 inch tall, maybe 2.5 centimeters tall, and it really needs to be bigger. Okay, and the reason why it really needs to be bigger, because we need to get this in our favor as far as the connection goes to the actual servo. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hold this model up here, and we're going to zoom in so you can take a close look to see what I've got here. So I've got the push rod, which was supplied in the kit. And remember, this was only a 40 quid kit, and it came with pretty much everything which you needed to go. So yeah, super value for money. Keep this in the back of your mind, right? Anyway, I've got the control horn right on the top hole of the the push rod on the very top hole of the control horn. Then when we go over to the servo, now a little note here, I'm using Corona 939 MG servos. I'll put a link to those in the video description. They are very, very torquey, and they're also pretty fast as well. I think they're about 4 kilograms torque, something crazy like that. And you will notice that I have the clevis down on the, I believe it's the 3rd hole down on the servo, and normally you would want it on the top and you'd want to go for like maximum deflection. However, because this model is so sensitive, okay, we need to like balance it back in our favor. So I've put the clevis down the servo, and ideally I would like a control horn here which is maybe another 1/2 inch taller, so we get some of the granularity back in our stick movements. Anyway, so that's what I've been and done for the surface movement, and this is why it's taken me a month to get to this stage, is because only now am I saying that I'm happy with the setup which I've got, and I wanted to share these things with the things which I've learned along with the journey along with getting this model like dialed into my kind of flying style. Now, there was one other bit of feedback, so Richard, if you're watching this for Flying Wings, one thing which I would actually say is that I would really like maybe an extra inch or 1.5 inches in the nose. And the reason why I'm suggesting that I would like an extra inch, maybe 1.5 inches in the nose, is because it gives us more option as far as battery placement here in the middle of the model. Now, let's be fair here, I'm running a huge, great big can or motor on the back of this model. So I've always got to it's always going to be an issue for me to hit CG because of the amount of weight on the back. But even with a smaller motor, I do feel maybe an extra inch, 1.5 inches in the nose will give more room in the actual fuselage itself for more placement and more kit which can go in there more easily. And again, you'll see it's an absolute wiring mess in here. So let's close that up. One thing which I do not like about this model is this rear. I've lost it. So there you go, that's how much I don't like it. There was a screw-in bolt thing for the back of this case. It was completely useless. and I've not got on with it very well. What I'm going to do, and it's going to be so crude, but it will just work so well, is in the hole back here is a little 3D printed part. All I'm going to do is that I'm going to put a machine head, a flathead screw in that hole, and then what I've been doing is just bending that backwards, the core flute backwards, and then pushing it down, and that's been enough to hold the lid down. So yeah, the one thing which I've not liked about this model, like really don't think it was any cop at all, was the screw thread at the back. That really just didn't work out for me personally at all. Mainly because I've got a battery and I want to go, so just go and clunk in. Really simple, works really, really well. As far as the video transmitter, this one I didn't elect to put it in the wings, and you'll also, I'll come back to that in just a second. So I elected to put it on the top of the fuselage, and that has worked out really, really well. So that's an Eachine 526 VTX 5.8, works really, really well. Again, I'll put a link to everything which I used in my setup down in the video description. One thing which I've seen more frequently in a couple of recent builds is that people have been running their servo wires across the top of the wings, and that, for me, is just such an ugly sight. I'm sure you've seen it. So what I've done on mine, so when I cut out the bay for the servo hole, is that what I did, and again I'll put a link to the build series in the top or right hand corner of your screen, is that what I did for the servo hole is that cut out the servo hole, and then whichever side the wire was on, stab the knife through, and then underneath you'll see that line there, which is hardly noticeable now, goes all the way across into the fuselage. And what that meant is that I now have a super clean top of my model, and that's what I really like. I hate to see wires running across the top, especially like these indentated wires in there, when it's unnecessary, especially when you can hide them underneath this model. Now there's a lot of positives there. Remember, it's only a 40 quid kit, it's not hard to build, it's just taken me a while to get this model really, really dialed in. I'm using very, very little rates as far as elevator goes, and to be honest, I'm not using that much as far as ailerons or the roll axis, because this model really does roll like a drill in the sky. It really does flip over, and because it's a plank wing, it's one of those lovely models which, when you pull back on those sticks, you yank back on the stick, that model really digs in and comes straight back. It's such a nice flying experience just from that point of view. I had some challenges to get this one to, like I said, to get around to do this review. But one thing which I can just say so well about this model, it is stupid fast, and it loves to fly fast. Okay, is the other one is that when you dig into a bend, when you get if you get yours, dig into a bend and then pull back on that stick, and this model just like digs in. I think it just like throws this little mini anchor out the window and then goes way, goes around. It is such a cool experience. So yeah, get in the sky and then pull back on the sticks, and look out for me doing that in the video. It really does dig in and then get around the turns. So let me just check my notes to make sure I've covered everything which I wanted to cover with you. So yeah, this is labelled as a sport speed wing. Be 100% clear here, this model is not for the novice. If you like speed, this one, she really does just fly fast. It's really nice that if you like speed, right up your street. It was 40 quid plus shipping. Oh yeah, it's a 35-inch wing, so that's about 90 centimeters, so just a little bit shy of a meter. So for me, that's a great size. Oh, one practical point, I have bent both of the tops of the wingtips just in the transportation. Again, that goes back to my comment earlier that you do get pieces of carbon rod in the vertical supports. Keep them in there, must do that, okay? What did I write on there? Ply plate on the bottom, that was a bit of feedback. The nose, in my humble opinion, needs to be maybe an inch and a half longer, just to give me, if it gave me my setup, and I know I've got a big motor on the back, just to give me more options as far as battery getting movement and stuff. And right now it is a bit of a pain to get the battery up in the nose, because I do have a big chunk of lead in the nose, whereas, and that's even running with the run cam on the nose. Whereas the slightly longer nose, it's like a seesaw effect, isn't it? And that would have counteracted that. Now I did, again, note for me, I did chop off 1/2 inch off the elevons, and I do feel that we needed bigger control horns on the back, just because of the pitch sensitive nature of a plank wing. It's just the way these models fly. Any model which has a straight wing like this is always going to be sensitive in the pitch axis. Let's have a quick look. What else have I got on there? Oh, and like I said, 3D printed parts. The fins are, you don't get those in the kit, but the fin supports have definitely helped my model, and these fins on the side, they just look the nuts. Okay, so I might even add some more fins on there just to make it look cool. By the way, I've not noticed any negative effect to putting those fins on the wing, so I might just put another pair on there just because they look cool. Alright, and that's it. Oh, the other one big thing for you to take away: you must laminate this model. I don't feel this model would have taken the beating which she has had without being laminated. Okay, besides that, really straightforward build. There's nothing perplexing here, none of it's hard. It's all the parts just kind of come together, and while this model did come with great instructions, and I vaguely looked around, but I know full well I've thrown the instructions at the bin already, is that while I know that this model did come with great instructions, you don't really need them because it's really bloody obvious where they go. Alright, it's not a hard build. If you've never laminated a model before, in the top right hand corner I'll put a link to the little mini playlist or the series which I did on laminating models. This one was really straightforward. The only awkward bit is just up here on the seams around the edges. The rest of it, in fact, it took me longer doing this nose section just here to get the laminate around, and you can see it's been doubled up and stuff on the nose. That's the bit which took me longer than the wings, because I found that bit awkward. The wings were dead easy to do. So anyway, let's get ourselves across to the flight line. I've got some flight footage for you, and yeah, please just enjoy the flight. I'll pop some music on. If the music isn't your taste, then mute it or something like that, or put your own tunes on. But she is absolutely great, and do keep in the back of your mind, she has taken an absolute beating from me alone, and she's still flying now. So with that said, if you have any questions about the Revenge Sport Wing, please just ask in the comments section underneath this video on YouTube. I'll do my best to answer them in a timely fashion for you. But overall, I'm now a month in with this model. I've got her dialed in to what I like, and she's flying for me now really well. And I can now give you like a thumbs up on the model because she is flying really well, and as you'll see in the video footage in a moment, she does really haul down the flight line like there's no tomorrow, and it has become actually a really nice enjoyable model to now fly compared to what she was when I first flew her. Oh, and if you didn't know what she was like when I first flew her, I'll do a cut.
Yeah. Right. You're right.
Up and down switchy.
Crazy touchy. If I get this down in one piece.
Yeah.
Low rates.
And there you go. Look, you can see what I mean. Is that it was a bucking Bronto, and then I also include the couple of hits as well. It's just the way things happen. So anyway, from myself, Matt, enjoy the flight footage, and I'll see you again shortly. From myself, Matt, cheerios.